Hello my lovelies, and thank you so much for joining me. So today's letter is U. I know we've done letter U before, but this one is kind of like U from A, whereas the other one was U from E. So U. U. And the word is câine. Câine. Well done guys, you just said dog. In today's video I'm going to carry on talking about Jeffrey Epstein and this is part 2 of the series. This series will be a 4 or 5 parter. I am still not sure yet because I still haven't finished all the information about this. So I highly suggest, if you didn't watch first part of the series, that you do watch that part, because I'm not going to give an overview of the first part in this video as there is a lot of information. So I want to get straight into it. I have also created a playlist for this series, and I will leave the link for it in the description down below. You can go and check it out and make sure you check the first part before you check this one. And also at the beginning, just a disclaimer, I don't mean any disrespect to anyone I talk about in the video. This is for education purposes only, and all the information I'm giving you in the video is already found in the public domain. Thank you so much. And just a warning, if you guys are sensitive to this kind of content, this series will contain instances where I talk about SA and crimes against children. So if this is something that triggers you in any way, then this is not the video for you to watch or the series for you to watch, and I will see you in the next video, which is not related. Thank you so much. Okay, let's crack on with it. In 2019, Virginia Giuffre was interviewed by the BBC's Panorama, where she continued to claim that Epstein, Trafficked her to Prince Andrew. She appealed directly to the public by stating, quote, "I implore the people in the UK to stand up beside me, to help me fight this fight, to not accept this as being okay." End of quote. As a result of Virginia's allegations and Maxwell's comments about them, Virginia Giuffre sued Maxwell for defamation in September 2015. After much legal confrontation, the case was settled under seal in May 2017. The Miami Herald, other media, and Ellen Dershowitz filed to have the documents about the settlement unsealed. After the judge dismissed their request, the matter was appealed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. On March 11, 2019, in the appeal of the district judge's refusal to unseal the documents relating to the 2017 defamation settlement of Giuffre versus Maxwell, the Second Circuit Court gave parties 1 week to provide good cause as to why they should remain under seal, without which they would be unsealed on March 19, 2019. Later, the court ordered these documents to be unsealed after redacting them to protect innocent parties. In Virginia's testimony, she claims that she was directed by Ghislaine to give erotic massages and engage in sensual activities with Prince Andrew, Jean-Luc Brunel, Glenn Dubin, Marvin Minsky, Governor Bill Richardson, another unnamed prince, an unnamed foreign president, a well-known prime minister, and an unnamed hotel chain owner from France, among others.
This is a trial.
The deposition doesn't claim that any of these men in fact engaged with Virginia, and as of August 2019, none of these men have been indicted or sued for related sex crimes. Virginia testified, quote, "My whole life revolved around just pleasing these men and keeping Ghislaine and Jeffrey happy. Their whole entire lives revolved around sex." End of quote. Yeah, I would assume because sex makes money. It always has, it still does, and it always will. On August the 9th, less than 24 hours before Epstein's death, 2,000 pages of previously sealed documents from the case were released. A John Doe asked the judge on September the 3rd to permanently keep the documents secret, claiming unproven allegations of impropriety could damage his reputation, even though he had no evidence that his name was included. A federal lawsuit filed in California in April 2016 against Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump by a California woman alleged that the two men essayed her at a series of parties at Epstein's Manhattan residence in 1994, when she was just 13 years old. The suit was dismissed by a federal judge in May 2016 because it didn't raise valid claims under federal law. The woman filed another federal suit in New York in June 2016, but it was withdrawn 3 months later, apparently without being served on the defendants. A third federal suit was filed in New York in September 2016. The two later suits included affidavits by an anonymous witness who attested to the accusations in the suits, asserting Jeffrey employed her to procure underage girls for him, and an anonymous person who declared that the plaintiff told him or her about the assaults at the time they happened. The plaintiff, who filed anonymously as Jane Doe, was scheduled to appear in a Los Angeles press conference 6 days before the 2016 election, but abruptly cancelled the event. Her lawyer, Lisa Bloom, claimed that the woman received threats. The suit was dropped on November the 4th of 2016. Trump attorney Alan Garten denied allegations, while Epstein declined to comment. Jeffrey Epstein was accused of sex of minors at his mansion at 9 East 71st Street. In 2017, Sarah Ransom filed a suit against Epstein and Maxwell, alleging that Ghislaine hired her to give massages to Epstein and later threatened to physically harm her or destroy her career prospects if she did not comply with their pleasure demands at his mansion in New York City and on his private Caribbean island, Little St. James. The suit was settled in 2018 under undisclosed terms, which in my eyes, like I said in the first part, screams even more guilt. A state civil lawsuit in Florida filed by attorney Bradley Edwards against Epstein was scheduled for trial in December 2018. The trial was expected to provide victims with their first opportunity to make their accusations in public. However, the case was settled on the first day of the trial, with Epstein publicly apologizing to Bradley Edwards. Other terms of the settlement were confidential. On 16th of April 2019, Maria Farmer went public and filed a sworn affidavit in federal court in New York, alleging that she and her 15-year-old sister Annie had been essayed by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell in separate locations in 1996. Maria met Epstein and Maxwell at her graduate art gallery reception at the New York Academy of Art in 1995. The following year, in the summer of 1996, they hired her to work on an art project in Leslie Wexner's Ohio mansion, where she was then essayed. She reported the incident to New York City Police Department and the FBI. Maria Farmer's affidavit also stated that during the same summer, Jeffrey flew her then 15-year-old sister to his New Mexico property, where he and Ghislaine essayed her on a massage table. On 22nd of July 2019, while in jail awaiting trial, Epstein was served with a petition regarding a pending state civil lawsuit filed by Jennifer Arauz, where she stated that an associate for Epstein recruited her outside Talent Unlimited High School at age 14, and she was gradually groomed for over a year before Epstein raped her in his New York City mansion when she was 15. Jennifer filed her suit on August 14, 2019, when New York state law was updated to allow 1 year for adult survivors of child SA to sue for previous offenses, regardless of how long ago the took place. In October 2019, she amended her complaint to include over 20 corporate entities associated with Epstein and named the additional individuals Leslie Groff and Kimberly Espinosa as enablers. 3 women, Kathleen Doe, Lisa Doe, and Priscilla Doe, sued the estate of Jeffrey Epstein on 20th of August 2019. 2 of the women were 17 and 1 was 20 when they met Epstein. The women alleged they were recruited, subjected to unwanted SES acts, and controlled by Epstein and the vast enterprise of co-conspirators. A New York accuser of Epstein, known only as Jane Doe, announced a federal lawsuit against his estate in the Southern District of New York on September 18, 2019, stating that she was recruited in 2002 and essayed by Epstein for 3 years, starting at age 14. 5 women, Teresa Helm, Annie Farmer, Maria Farmer, Juliette Bryant, and an unidentified woman represented by David Boies, sued Epstein's estate in federal district court in Manhattan in November 2018, accusing him of rape, battery, and false imprisonment, and seeking unspecified damages. On November 18 of 2019, a woman identified as Jane Doe 15 made a public appearance with her attorney Gloria Allred to announce that she was suing the estate of Jeffrey Epstein in the district court for the Southern District of New York, alleging that he manipulated and essayed her in 2004 when she was 15 years old. On November 21, 2019, Teala Davis appeared with her attorney Gloria Allred and announced her lawsuit in Manhattan Federal Court against Epstein's estate. Teala stated that after meeting Epstein in 2002, he essayed and her in New York, New Mexico, Florida, the Virgin Islands, and France. On 3rd of December 2019, lawyer Jordan Merson filed a lawsuit in New York on behalf of 9 anonymous accusers, Jane Doe's 1 to 9, against Epstein's estate for battery, assault, and intentional emotional distress. The claims date from 1985 through the 2000s and include individuals who were 13, 14, and 15 when they first encountered Epstein. The lawsuit was filed by Bradley Edwards on behalf of his client in late December 2019. The accuser, J.J. Doe, is described as being a 14-year-old resident of Palm Beach County at the time Epstein her in 2004. A lawsuit was filed in Superior Court of the U.S. Virgin Islands in January 2020 alleging that Epstein ran a SEX conspiracy for over 2 decades through 2018 with children as young as 11 years old on Epstein's Caribbean islands. According to Attorney General Dennis George, his alleged criminal activities on the islands were concealed through a complex network of companies. In January 2020, a lawsuit was filed against Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein alleging that they recruited a 13-year-old music student at the Interlochen Center for the Arts in 1994 and subjected her to SA. The suit states that Jane Doe was repeatedly essayed by Epstein over a 4-year period and that Ghislaine Maxwell played a key role in both her recruitment and by participating in the assaults. In August 2020, 9 Jane Does filed suit accusing Epstein of SA. The alleged victims in the lawsuit include an 11-year-old and 13-year-old and the victim who alleged in 1975. In August 2020, Epstein was sued by a Jane Doe accusing him of SAing her for 1.5 years, beginning when she was an 18-year-old aspiring singer and model in New York. And I'm kind of picturing here the sale pitch, if you will, like Epstein telling her, oh, I'm going to help you to become a famous singer and be a famous model in New York, and that's how he kind of lured her into his life, and then he took advantage of her. And I think that in a lot of these victims, a very similar thing is happening and was happening. They were lured under false pretenses and then they were taken advantage of. A civil suit was filed against Epstein's estate in March 2021 by a Broward County woman who accused Epstein and Maxwell of her after repeatedly raping her in Florida in 2008. On July the 6th, 2019, Epstein was arrested by the FBI NYPD Crimes Against Children Task Force at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey on SES charges. He was jailed at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City, which has held prisoners such as John Gotti, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, and Paul Manafort. According to witnesses and sources, on the day of his arrest, around 12 FBI agents forced open the door to his Manhattan townhouse, the Herbert and Strauss house, with search warrants. The search of his townhouse turned up evidence of sex and also found hundreds and perhaps thousands of sensually suggestive photographs of fully or partially nude females. Some of the photos were confirmed as those of underage females. In a locked safe, CDs were found with handwritten labels including the descriptions "Young name plus name, Miss Nudes 1" and "Girls Pics Nude." Also found in the safe were $70,000 in cash, 48 diamonds, and a fraudulent Austrian passport which expired in 1987 that had Epstein's photo but another name. The passport had numerous entrance and exit stamps, including entrance stamps that showed the use of the passport to enter France, Spain, the United Kingdom, and Saudi Arabia in the 1980s. The passport showed his place of residence as Saudi Arabia. According to his attorneys, Epstein was advised to acquire the passport because, as an affluent member of the Jewish faith, he was in danger of being kidnapped while traveling abroad. I mean, what a ridiculous excuse and utterly stupid justification, in my opinion. On July the 8th, prosecutors with the Public Corruption Unit of the Southern District of New York charged Jeffrey Epstein with sex and conspiracy to minors for sex. The grand jury indictment alleges that dozens of underage girls were brought into Epstein's mansions for sensual encounters. Judge Kenneth Mara was to decide whether the non-prosecution agreement that protected Epstein from the more serious charges should still stand. And of course, Epstein requested to be released on bond, offering to post $100 million with the condition that he would also submit to house arrest in his New York City mansion. U.S. District Judge Richard M. Berman denied the request on July 18, saying that Epstein posed a danger to the public and a serious flight risk to avoid prosecution. On July 23rd, Epstein was found injured and semi-conscious at 1:30 a.m. on the floor of his cell, with marks around his neck that were suspected to be the result of either an ending of his life attempt or an assault. His cellmate, former New York City police officer Nicolas Tartaglione, who was charged with 4 counts of murder, was questioned about Epstein's condition. He denied having any knowledge of what happened. Epstein himself said he recollected nothing. According to NBC News, 2 sources said that Epstein might have tried to hang himself. A third said the injuries were not serious and could have been staged, and the 4th source said that an assault by his cellmate had not been ruled out. I mean, how about that police officer maybe getting paid to kill Epstein? And in the end, he knew too much of too many high-profile people, just saying, in my opinion, or perhaps the first accident was kind of like an insight into what will come next. On August 29, 2019, following Epstein's death, 10 days prior, the case against him was closed after Judge Berman dismissed all SEX charges. However, he also expressed support for Epstein's accusers. Not that it makes any difference, does it? Prosecutors objected to the ruling and stated that they would continue an investigation for potential co-conspirators. On August 23, 2019, the prosecutor's office in Paris, France, opened a preliminary investigation into Epstein. He was being investigated for RAPE and SA of minors under and over the age of 15, criminal association with a view to committing crimes, and association with criminals with a view to committing offenses. The prosecutor said that the goal of the investigation is to find possible crimes committed in France and elsewhere against French citizens. Previous long-term girlfriends associated with Epstein include Eva Anderson Dubin and Ghislaine Maxwell. Epstein was romantically linked to Eva for an 11-year period, mostly in the 1980s, and the two later remained friendly well after her marriage to Glenn Dubin. Jeffrey met Ghislaine, daughter of disgraced media baron Robert Maxwell, by 1991. Jeffrey got Ghislaine to come to the United States in 1991 to recover from her grief following the death of her father. She was implicated by several of Epstein's accusers as procuring or recruiting underage girls, in addition to once being Epstein's girlfriend. In a 2009 deposition, several of Epstein's household employees testified that Ghislaine had a central role in both his public and private life, referring to her as his main girlfriend, who also handled the hiring, supervising, and firing of staff starting around 1992. In 1995, Epstein renamed one of his companies the Ghislaine Corporation in Palm Beach, Florida. The company was dissolved in 1998. In 2000, Maxwell moved into a 7,000 square foot townhouse less than 10 blocks from Epstein's New York mansion. This townhome was purchased for $4.95 million by an anonymous limited liability company with an address that matches the office of J. Epstein & Co. Representing the buyer, like I mentioned previously, was Darren Indyke, Epstein's longtime lawyer. In a 2003 Vanity Fair expose, Epstein refers to Maxwell as my best friend. Jeffrey Epstein was a longtime acquaintance of Prince Andrew and Tom Barack and attended parties with many prominent people, including Bill Clinton, George Stephanopoulos, Donald Trump, Katie Couric, Woody Allen, and Harvey Weinstein. His contacts included Rupert Murdoch, Michael Bloomberg, Richard Branson, Michael Jackson, Alec Baldwin, and the Kennedys. His contacts also included Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Both Clinton and Trump claimed that they never visited Epstein's island. Jeffrey Epstein owned a private Boeing 727 jet and traveled in it frequently, logging 600 flying hours a year, usually with guests on board. The jet was nicknamed, as we all know by now, the Lolita Express by the locals in the Virgin Islands because of its frequent arrivals at Little St. James with apparently underage girls. In 2003, Epstein flew to Cuba aboard his plane with Colombian President Andres Pastrana Arango at the invitation of Cuban President Fidel Castro. According to Fabiola Santiago of the Miami Herald, Epstein was likely considering relocating to Cuba in order to escape U.S. law enforcement. He was under investigation from U.S. law enforcement at that time. In 2009, Epstein's brother, Mark, claimed that Trump had flown on Epstein's plane at least once. He later told the Washington Post that Trump flew numerous times on Epstein's airplane, although Mark was present on only one of the flights. According to Michael Corcoran, Trump flew Epstein on his own airplane at least on one occasion. In September 2002, Epstein flew Clinton, Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker to Africa in this jet. Flight records obtained in 2016 show Bill Clinton flew 27 times to at least 12 international locations. Flight logs didn't list any Secret Service detail for at least 5 flights on an Asia trip, and the Secret Service stated that there is no evidence of the former president making a trip to Epstein's private island. In 2019, a Clinton spokesperson stated that in 2002 and 2003, Clinton took 4 trips on Epstein's airplane, making stops on 3 continents, all with his staff and Secret Service detail. At the time of Epstein's 2009 arrest, Clinton's spokeswoman Angel Uriah stated that Clinton had not spoken to Epstein in well over a decade and has never been to Little St. James Island, Epstein's ranch in New Mexico, or his residence in Florida. In a profile of Jeffrey Epstein in New York Magazine in 2002, former Democratic Senate leader George J. Mitchell said of him, quote, "I would certainly call him a friend and a supporter," end of quote. In the same article, Donald Trump remarked, quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life," end of quote. In July 2019, Trump said, quote, "I knew him like everybody in Palm Beach knew him," end of quote, stating 4 times he had not been a fan of Epstein and that he had not spoken to him in about 15 years. A video shot in 1992 surfaced showing the 2 men partying together at Mar-a-Lago.
Come on in, go inside.
An invitation into Donald Trump's world. Footage from 1992 found in the NBC archives shows the future president welcoming Jeffrey Epstein to his Mar-a-Lago estate. The get-together more than a decade before Epstein pleaded guilty to prostitution charges in Florida. Both men are seen enjoying themselves, Trump pointing out women dancing in front of them. An apparently friendly encounter with a man the president is now looking to distance himself from.
Well, I knew him like everybody in Palm Beach knew him. I had a falling out with him a long time ago. I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan.
If you have already made the decision to come forward, thank you. If you have not, the time is now.
Courtney Wild first told authorities Epstein sexually abused her more than a decade ago and says she was kept in the dark about the secret deal he cut with federal prosecutors in Florida in 2007.
My voice was muted by the same government that was supposed to protect me.
Law enforcement officials across the country now working together as more women speak up, saying they too were victimized by Epstein.
By 2007, Trump allegedly banned Epstein from his Mar-a-Lago club for inappropriate pursuit of young females. The ban allegation was included in court documents filed by attorney Bradley Edwards, even though Bradley later said it was a rumor he tried to but was not able to confirm. Bill Clinton praised Jeffrey as a committed philanthropist with insights and generosity. At the time, Jeffrey was on the board of Rockefeller University, a member of the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations, and was a major donor to Harvard University. Keep in mind Harvard University because this will prove quite important later on. Jeffrey visited the White House while Clinton was president on 4 known occasions. In 1993, he went to a donor event at the White House with his companion, the one and only Ghislaine Maxwell. Around the same time, he also met with President Clinton's aide, Mark Middleton, on at least 3 occasions at the White House. In 1995, financier Lynn Forrester discussed Jeffrey Epstein and currency stabilization with Clinton. Jeffrey, according to his own accounts, was heavily involved in a foreign exchange market and traded large amounts of currency in the unregulated forex market. In 1995, Jeffrey also attended a small political fundraiser dinner for Bill Clinton, which included 14 other people, including Ron Perelman, Don Johnson, Jimmy Buffett, and dinner organizer Paul Prosperi. Only big names here, guys, only big names. From the 1990s to mid-2000s, Epstein often socialized with the future president Donald Trump. Author Michael Wolff wrote that Trump, Epstein, and Tom Barrack were at the time like a set of nightlife musketeers on the social scene. Epstein and Trump socialized both in New York City and Palm Beach, where they both had houses. In April 2003, New York Magazine reported that Jeffrey hosted a dinner party in his Manhattan residence to honor Bill Clinton, who did not attend, although Trump attended. According to the Washington Post, one person who knew Jeffrey and Trump during this time noted that they were tight and they were each other's wingmen. In November 2004, Jeffrey and Trump's friendship ran into trouble when they became involved in a bidding war for a $40 million mansion, Maison de l'Amitié, which was being auctioned in Palm Beach. Trump won the auction for $41 million and successfully sold the property 4 years later for $95 million to the Russian billionaire Dmitry Rybolovlev. That month was the last time Jeffrey and Trump were recorded to have interacted. Swiss leaks files indicate Jeffrey had millions stored in his offshore accounts. The exact origin of Epstein's wealth is unknown. Leslie Wexner was one source of Jeffrey's original wealth. An assistant of Jeffrey also stated that he got his fortune started through Robert Maxwell, the media mogul father of Ghislaine Maxwell. When Jeffrey pleaded guilty in 2008 to soliciting and procuring prostitution, his lawyers stated he was a billionaire with a net worth of over $1 billion. A number of sources, however, have questioned the extent of his wealth and his status as a billionaire. According to an article in the New York Times, his fortune may be more illusion than fact. He lost large sums of money in the 2008 financial crisis, and friends and patrons, including retail billionaire Leslie Wexner, deserted him following his pleading guilty to charges in 2008. New York Magazine claimed that there is scant proof of Jeffrey's financial bona fides, and Forbes also ran an article entitled "Why SEX offender Jeffrey Epstein is not a billionaire." Spencer Cuvin, an attorney for 3 of Epstein's alleged victims in the case where he pleaded guilty to sensual activity with minors, stated that he and his team pursued every possible angle to find out Epstein's net worth, but found that much of his wealth is offshore. An investigation by the Miami Herald of the Swiss leaks documents indicated that Jeffrey had multiple financial accounts with millions of dollars in offshore tax havens. In the Paradise Papers, records showed that in February 1997, Jeffrey became a client of Appleby, a Bermuda-based law firm which specialized in the creation of offshore companies and investment vehicles for the ultra-wealthy. A client profile of Jeffrey described his job cryptically as the manager of fortune. Federal prosecutors on 12th of July 2019 stated in court documents that based on records from one financial institution, Jeffrey Epstein was extravagantly wealthy and had assets worth at least $500 million and earned more than $10 million a year. The extent of his wealth, however, was not known since he had not filled out a financial affidavit for his bail application. According to Bloomberg News, quote, "Today, so little is known about Epstein's current business or clients that the only things that can be valued with any certainty are his properties," End of quote. The Miami Herald, in their investigation of the Paradise Papers and Swiss Leaks documents, concluded that Jeffrey's wealth is likely spread secretly across the globe. No wonder that he's got so many properties and connections all over the world. In 2020, Jeffrey's estate finances revealed that it had paid out nearly $50 million between June 2020 and December 2020 to more than 100 women who brought claims to the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund set up in the US Virgin Islands. By February 2021, the estate was valued at about $240 million, down from estimates of $630 million a year earlier. This prompted the Attorney General of the US Virgin Islands, Dennis George, to file an emergency motion seeking the immediate asset freeze. She contended in the court filing, which the victims joined, that the estate executors had mismanaged the money. Or perhaps I myself personally wouldn't call it mismanage the money, but rather trying to make it seem like he's got less and less and less and less money somehow in some kind of a fraud situation. I think, I have no idea how it works, but I suspect that this could have been the case to make the money disappear so that the estate doesn't have to pay even more damages, considering that not even in 6 months he paid, what, millions? So Jeffrey Epstein, as we mentioned earlier, owned the Herbert and Strauss house on 9 East 71st Street in the Upper East Side of Manhattan in New York City. It was originally purchased for $13.2 million in 1989 by Epstein's mentor, Les Wexner, who renovated the property completely. Epstein moved into the mansion in 1995 after Wexner married and moved with his wife to Columbus, Ohio, to raise their family. He took full possession of the mansion in 1998 when he paid Wexner $20 million for the house. The house was valued in 2019 by federal prosecutors at $77 million, while the city assessed its value at $56 million. The mansion is considered the largest private residence in Manhattan at 21,000 square foot, 2,000 square meters. Hidden under a flight of stairs, there is a LED-lined bathroom fitted with its own closed-circuit television screens and a telephone, both concealed in a cabinet under the sink.
He had a lot of information on a lot of people, a lot of blackmail, videos and pictures.
If you look here, the limestone, inside the house, behind like a space like that, they have cameras, and they have them everywhere. Jeffrey took me into a room which is a little bit back further than this window, and it's leaded, and it had all the computers and all these monitors, like the old-fashioned TV monitors, stacked.
I'm looking at the monitors, and I'm like, that's my room. That's the massage room. That's my shower. That's my toilet. That's everyone else's toilet in the house. That's everyone else's shower in the house. That's every single corner of that house was monitored. He was watching everybody all the time. This was a blackmail scheme. All those powerful people using underage girls. When he told me people owe me favors and I will never get caught, I can get away with things, he meant it.
The house also has its own heated sidewalk to melt away the snow. The entrance hall is lined with rows of individually framed prosthetic eyeballs that were made in England for injured soldiers.
On February 22, 1993, Epstein's shell company, the Zorro Trust, completed a purchase of lands in Stanley, New Mexico. The deal included rights to the lease on public lands, a total of 1,159 acres. The entire ranch, including a privately held land, totaled nearly 8,000 acres. Epstein began constructing a stable, detached garages, and homes in 1994, and began building his mansion in 1999. Including porches and patios, the mansion came to 57,400 120 square feet. This property had so much space that Epstein had built the airstrip on privately held portion of the ranch. The ranch is surrounded on nearly all sides by land and featured a privately secured gate for the property. The home featured guest homes, arched pillars, and courtyards leading to other wings, as well as an abundance of indoor to outdoor flow with large glass sliding doors and oversized windows. In addition, the home was decked out with an abundance of custom fixtures, elegant chandeliers, Renaissance decor, and unique antiques, which will continue to be a theme throughout this house tour. His former mansion featured its own indoor swimming pool that came complete with a jacuzzi and shower area. While the photos by now look outdated, you can tell just how massive this property was. And honestly, knowing what type of guy he is, even seeing the photos gives me an eerie vibe of the place. Moving on to Florida, shortly after Epstein's death, his Palm Beach home was demolished. Palm Beach is a popular getaway in the Sunshine State, separated from the mainland by the Lake Worth Lagoon. It's known for its glitzy estates, much like this one, and its beaches, including the long, sandy Palm Beach itself. Epstein's former home was purchased by Florida real estate developer Todd Michael Glazier, and he tore it down to make way for a 14,000 square foot art modern home. Glazier and his partners reportedly paid $18 million for the Epstein home, a $4 million discount from its original listing price of $22 million. This home was built in 1950 and purchased by Epstein in 1990 for $2.5 million. The 14,000 square foot property boasted 6 bedrooms, 7.5 bathrooms, a separate staff house with 3 bedrooms, and a pool house. The property featured roughly 170 feet of water frontage on the Intercoastal Waterway, with space for a dock and views of Tarpon and Everglades Islands, as well as a massive pool that had a patio space all around it to relax and soak up the sun. This mansion was also the site of a raid back in 2008, which led to Epstein's indictment on prostitution charges. In addition, he allegedly enticed and recruited underage girls to the property to engage in inappropriate acts. Among the items authorities found in the house during the raid were framed nude photos, toys, soap-shaped like genitalia, and massage tables. Honestly, after that disturbing news, I think we've heard enough about this place. While Epstein had spent his final years on his private island in the Virgin Islands, which has been coined Pedophile Island, his most expensive real estate purchase was actually in New York. His New York mansion has been described as the largest private residence in Manhattan, and once you hear how big it was, it makes sense. This estate features a whopping 50,000 square foot, 9-story mansion that is worth at least $77 million to upwards of $88 million today. A spacious abode, this home featured over 40 rooms throughout the mansion. The Herbert N. Strauss Mansion was the last and largest of just a handful of mammoth mansions built during its era in the 1930s and became the wealthiest and most prominent block of all New York City. Good luck finding that space in the city nowadays. Built as New York City's largest and most luxurious French neoclassical mansion on a 50-foot wide by 102.2-foot deep lot and 9 stories high. Some of this property's luxuries include 15-foot tall oak entry doors, imported French limestone decorated with detailed carvings, sculpture figures, and ornamental ironworks. The home was decked out with an abundance of custom fixtures, elegant chandeliers, more Renaissance decor, and a terrific New York City views. In addition, the apartment even featured heated sidewalks to melt snow during those frigid New York City winters. Like most of Epstein's properties that were raided, this home was no different and featured many bizarre and disturbing details, which included a wall of fame. In Epstein's study, the walls and table are covered with pictures of famous and infamous people, including faces like Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Bill Clinton. Epstein possesses a mural depicting a photorealistic prison scene that included barbed wire, corrections officers, and a guard station with Mr. Epstein portrayed in the middle. This is likely a reference to the 18-month jail sentence Epstein served, but only 13 months of it as part of a 2008 plea deal that allowed him to avoid federal charges and potentially a lifetime of imprisonment. Another disturbing feature was Epstein's life-size female doll hanging from a chandelier. The entrance hall was decorated with row upon row of individually framed eyeballs, imported from England. At the bottom of a staircase, Epstein had a human chessboard. Each of its customized figurines is modeled after one of his staffers and dressed suggestively. In Epstein's study, he also had a stuffed black poodle situated atop a grand piano, and Epstein reportedly pointed it out to visitors, telling them, "No decorator would ever tell you to do that, but I want people to think about what it means to stuff a dog." In addition, Epstein had a large stuffed tiger in his office. Epstein was also a collector of eccentric art. Aside from his portrait of Bill Clinton in a dress, he owned a rare painting worth almost $6 million. This painting featured a young woman cupping her exposed left breast hanging behind Epstein's desk.
I mean, talk about creepy, guys. That's an understatement. From heated sidewalk, we jump right to prosthetic eyeballs. I mean, imagine the faces of whoever visited that place, much less children. Jeffrey's other properties include a private island near St. Thomas in the US Virgin Islands called Little St. James, which includes a mansion and guest houses purchased in 1998, and maybe you were not aware of this, the neighboring island of Great St. James purchased in 2016. Epstein was building a compound on the neighboring island, including an amphitheater and underwater office and pool, but ran into problems when a stop work order was issued in late 2018. However, the work continued despite the order. Why would you need an amphitheater and an underwater office? I have no idea. Jeffrey, previous to his final Manhattan home, lived in a spacious townhouse which was a former Iranian government building that had been taken over by the State Department during the Iranian Revolution, at 34 East 69th Street for a rate of $15,000 a month from 1992 to 1995. He also previously owned a mansion outside Columbus, Ohio, near Wexner's home from 1992 to 1998, which he purchased from his mentor. Before the Herbert Strauss house was purchased, Wexner purchased in 1988 the adjacent townhouse at 11 East 71st Street. Like in the case of the 9 East 71st Street house, Epstein was on the deed of the 11 East 71st Street house as the trustee. The townhouse was sold in 1996 to the Comet Trust, which holds part of the assets of the de Gunsburg-Bronfman family. I am telling you guys, Jeffrey must have had some pretty heavy blackmail material against Wexner to be able to handle all of his financial affairs and so many other things. Jeffrey also rented offices for his business dealings in the Villard House at 457 Madison Avenue. Stephen Hoffenberg originally set up the offices for him in 1987 when he was consulting for Tower Financial. Jeffrey used these offices until at least 2003. Around this time, Michael Wolff saw Jeffrey in his office, which in the past were the offices of Random House. Michael believed Jeffrey's offices were a strange place which didn't really have a corporate feel to them. The offices were almost European. It's old-fashioned, unrehabbed in its way. The trading floor was filled with guys in yarmulkes, which are the brimless caps typically worn by Jewish men. In his recount, Michael Wolff said who those men were, he had no idea. They were like a throwback, a bunch of guys from the 50s. Quote, so here is Jeffrey in this incredibly beautiful office with pieces of art and a view of the courtyard, and he seems like the most relaxed guy in the world. You want to say, what's going on here? And he gives you that Cheshire smile. End of quote. Jeffrey rented multiple apartment units for his employees, models, and guests since the 1990s at 301 East 66th Street. The majority of the apartment complex at this address is owned by OSA Properties, which is owned by Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark, who purchased the complex in the early 1990s from Wexner. Over the years, Jeffrey housed different friends at 11 East 71st Street, including his ex-girlfriend Eva Anderson, who is now married to his hedge fund friend Glenn Dubin, MC2 Models founder Jean-Luc Brunel, and on occasions former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. He housed some of his workers, including his pilot, housekeeper, and office work staff in the apartment complex. He also housed underage girls who Brunel scouted for his MC2 modeling agency. On August the 6th, 2012, a model and party promoter associated with MC2, Pedro Gaspar, who lived above another of the modeling agency's locations in Manhattan, died of what some consider to be a suspicious drug overdose. Yeah. So many suspicious deaths here. From 1989 until 2003, Jeffrey donated more than $139,000 to U.S. Democratic Party federal candidates and committees and over $18,000 to U.S. Republican Party candidates and groups. So I would safely assume that he was buying his way up in or for whatever favors he would later need. He contributed $50,000 to Democrat Bill Richardson's successful campaign for governor of New Mexico in 2002 and again for his successful run for re-election in 2006. Also that year, he contributed $15,000 to Democrat Gary King's successful campaign for Attorney General of New Mexico. He later contributed $35,000 to King's 2014 unsuccessful campaign for governor. Other contributions in New Mexico included $10,000 toward Jim Baca's campaign to become head of the Land Commission and $2,000 toward Santa Fe County Sheriff Jim Solano's bid for re-election. In 2010, Jeffrey received a notice from New York, Mexico Department of Public Safety which said, quote, "You are not required to register as a SEX offender with the state of New Mexico." End of quote. This was in contravention of federal law, which would seem to say that the conviction in Florida required him to register in New Mexico. No wonder that Jeffrey made all of these contributions. They were payment, right? Bribes, payments, whatever you want to call them. Favors, yes. Jeffrey donated millions of dollars to Harvard University over the years for different causes. In 1991, he was one of 4 donors who pledged to raise $2 million for a Hillel student building, Grozovsky Hall, at Harvard University. In 2000, he established the Jeffrey Epstein 6 Foundation, which funds science research and education. Prior to 2003, the foundation funded Martin Nowak's research at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. In May 2003, he pledged a series of donations totaling $30 million to create a mathematical biology and evolutionary dynamics program at Harvard, which was run by Martin Nowak. According to the Boston Globe, the actual amount received from Epstein was $6.5 million. In 2019, Forbes deleted a 2013 article that called Jeffrey one of the largest backers of cutting-edge science after the New York Times revealed its author, Drew Hendricks, had been paid $600 to submit it falsely as his own. Okay, I need a water break here. Oh God. Let's have a break and then we'll come back to it. There's just too much information to take in here. According to attorney Gerald B. Lefcourt, Jeffrey was part of the original group that conceived of the Clinton Global Initiative. Jeffrey co-organized a science event with illusionist and skeptic Al Sikel called the Mindshift Conference. The conference took place in 2010 on Jeffrey's private island, Little St. James. In attendance were scientists Maury Gelman, Leonard Mlodinow, and Gerald J. Sussman. The true extent of Jeffrey's donations is unknown. The Jeffrey Epstein 6 Foundation fails to disclose information which other charities would routinely disclose. Concerns have been raised over this lack of transparency. In 2015, the Attorney General of the state of New York was reported to be trying to gain information but was refused, since the charities were based outside of the state and did not solicit in New York State. Jeffrey, besides making donations to the Jeffrey Epstein 6 Foundation, also made a number of charitable donations through his 3 private charities: Epstein Interest, the COUQ Foundation, and Gratitude American Limited. According to federal tax filings, Epstein donated $30 million between 1998 and 2018 through these 3 charities. Following his death, a number of scientists and institutions, including Harvard University and Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, came under criticism for accepting money from Jeffrey and his foundation, with some individuals offering to give away money donated by him. I think that they only did that to save face, in my opinion, allegedly. In my opinion, freedom of speech, you know. And this kind of smells like money laundering. Money laundering, anyone? Kind of giving these vibes? Again, allegedly, in my opinion. According to various sources, beginning in the early 2000s, Jeffrey developed a strong interest in improving the human race through genetic engineering and artificial intelligence, including using his own sperm. Yes. He addressed the scientific community at various events and occasions and communicated his fascination with eugenics. It was reported in August 2019 that Jeffrey planned to, quote, seed the human race with his DNA, end of quote, by impregnating up to 20 women at a time using his New Mexico compound as a baby ranch, where mothers would give birth to his offspring. He was an advocate of cryonics and his own idiosyncratic version of transhumanism, and had said that he intended to have his penis and head frozen. Oh my god. Like, seriously, this is nothing short of crazy, although I kind of suspected this from him and his connections and his interests. I mean, I briefly touched this subject in my Madeleine McCann videos. I'll leave the link for the playlist in the description below. And in a way, having known everything that I know in regards to Madeleine McCann and all the high-profile connections, it kind of makes sense in the way that I see Jeffrey Epstein. Like I previously mentioned, I truly believe that much more was going on in his world than just of underage girls, because in my own opinion, for this kind of crime, you don't need an island, you don't need a private jet, high profile connections and properties all over the world. Yes, you could argue that he's providing girls to the elite, but I'm sure 100% from my own point of view, much more was going on there. Just think for a second about the island. Girls were brought in. There was security on the premises. He bought the neighboring island as well. CCTV all over the compounds. Only one way in and one way out on his Lolita Express jet. He didn't take a liking to very young girls before puberty, but girls at the age of puberty or after. So potentially they were fertile. I know that the victims who came forward didn't carry his children, but there is a very important thing to remember here. We do not know all of the victims. We do not know the extent of the girls that he lured and his co-conspirators, including Ghislaine Maxwell. And we don't know the extent of how many children were being by him and his circles. I think, guys, honestly, it's a real possibility that he was working on fulfilling his dream of seeding the human race with his DNA, except that we do not know the true extent of it, and I don't think that we will ever know it. Caitlin Hall Jamieson, director of the Annenberg Public Policy Center at the University of Pennsylvania, said, and I quote, Scientists need funding for important work. If the funding is for legitimate scientific work, there is nothing wrong with accepting support from a billionaire. However, it would have been wrong for scientists to accept his funding if they were aware that he was planning a eugenics experiment that might draw legitimacy from his association with them. End of quote. Professor George Church also publicly apologized for meeting Epstein after his 13-month sentence, saying, quote, "There should have been more conversations about should we be doing this, should we be helping this guy. There was just a lot of nerd tunnel vision." End of quote. Tunnel vision or millions donated, in my opinion. At the time of his death, Jeffrey Epstein was being held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center awaiting trial for SEX. On July 23, 2019, 3 weeks before his death, he was found unconscious in his jail cell with injuries to his neck. He said that he believed he was attacked by his cellmate who was awaiting trial for 4 counts of murder, while the correctional staff suspected attempted ending of his life, kind of like setting the scene for what's to come. After that incident, he was placed on ending your life watch. 6 days later, on July 29, 2019, he was taken off this watch and placed in a special housing unit with another inmate. His close associates said he was in good spirits. When he was placed in the special housing unit, the jail informed the Justice Department that he would have a cellmate and that a guard would look into the cell every 30 minutes. These procedures were not followed on the night of his death. On August the 9th, 2019, Jeffrey's cellmate was transferred out, but no one took his place. Later in the evening, contrary to the jail's normal procedure, Jeffrey was not checked every 30 minutes. The 2 guards who were assigned to check his jail unit that night fell asleep and did not check on him for about 3 hours. The guards falsified related records. 2 cameras in front of his cells also malfunctioned that night. I'm getting a deja vu feeling here from a different case, which honestly I can't remember at all for the life of me, where again they were planning to kill this guy right on the night that he was supposed to be released from prison. I can't remember which case it was about. No, I can't remember now. Now, this to me, like I mentioned, and I'm gonna say it again, sounds just like setting the stage for what's to come in an elaborate plan to make it look like ending your life situation. In my opinion, in my view. Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell at the Metropolitan Correction Center in New York City at 6:30 a.m. on August the 10th, 2019. The Bureau of Prisons said life-saving measures were initiated immediately after the discovery of his body. Emergency responders were called and he was taken to a hospital. On August the 10th, 2019, the Bureau of Prisons and U.S. Attorney General William Barr called the death an apparent ending his life, although no final determination was made. On 11th of August 2019, an autopsy was performed. It appeared likely that Jeffrey thrown... You guys need to hear that. You really need to hear this. It appeared likely that Jeffrey thrown himself violently off the cell's top bunk, which would explain the damage he suffered other than strangulation. The preliminary result of the autopsy found that he sustained multiple breaks in his neck bones. Among the bones broken in his neck was the hyoid bone. Such breaks of the hyoid bone can happen from those who hang themselves, but they are more common in victims of homicide by strangulation. A 2010 study found broken hyoids in 25% of cases of hangings. A larger study conducted from 2010 to 2016 found hyoid damage in just 16 of 264, or 6% of cases of hangings. And what are the odds that Jeffrey Epstein would be in the 6%? Hyoid bone breaks become more common with age as the bones become more brittle. Forensic pathologist Cyril Wett noted that hanging by leaning forward would not result in broken cervical bones. Now, according to the autopsy, plain and simple, just listen to how it sounds. Jeffrey threw himself violently off the top bunk and then he proceeded to hang himself. So he took the time to violently throw himself off the top bunk. How ridiculous is that? How ridiculous does it sound? Or maybe does it sound better that someone else violently threw him off his top bunk and then strangled him? On August 16, 2019, Barbara Sampson, the New York City medical examiner, ruled his death a killing himself by hanging. The medical examiner, according to Jeffrey's defense counsel, only saw 9 minutes of footage from one security camera to help her arrive at her conclusion. Jeffrey's defense lawyers were not satisfied with the conclusion of the medical examiner and were conducting their own independent investigation into the cause of his death, including taking legal action if necessary to view the pivotal camera footage near his cell during the night of his death. His lawyer said that the evidence concerning his death was far more consistent with murder than ending his life. Michael Baden, an independent pathologist hired by the Epstein estate, observed the autopsy. In October 2019, Dr. Baden said that Mr. Epstein, 66 years old at the time, experienced a number of injuries, among them a broken bone in his neck that are extremely unusual in ending your life hangings and could occur much more commonly in homicidal strangulation. Baden stated that he thinks the evidence points to homicide rather than killing himself. On August 18, 2019, it was reported that Jeffrey Epstein signed his last will and testament on August 8, 2019, 2 weeks after being found injured in his cell and 2 days before his death. Until this time, he had been depositing money in other inmates' commissary accounts to avoid being attacked. The signing of the will was witnessed by 2 attorneys that knew him. The will named 2 longtime employees as executors and immediately gifted all of his assets and any assets remaining in his estate to a trust, which I suspect, I didn't check this one out, but my common sense is telling me that this trust belongs somehow to some member of his family or someone known to him or someone known to Ghislaine or any kind of one of his associates, probably through a company or whatever or whatnot, just to kind of try and make this money disappear, if you will, but then they can also be accessed by the people who know exactly where the money are, if it makes sense. Following his autopsy, his body was claimed by his brother Mark. On September the 5th, 2019, his body was buried in an unmarked grave next to those of his parents at the I.J. Morris Star of David Cemetery in Palm Beach, Florida. The names of his parents were also removed from their tombstone in order to prevent vandalism. Attorney General Barr ordered an investigation by the Department of Justice Inspector General in addition to the investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, saying that he was appalled by Jeffrey's death in federal custody. 2 days later, Barr said there had been serious irregularities in the prison's handling of Jeffrey, promising, quote, "We will get to the bottom of what happened and there will be accountability," end of quote. Whenever this will be, guys, I don't think that we will live long enough to see it, in my opinion. Then, also considering the privileges that Jeffrey had whilst in prison, you remember me mentioning the going in and out on 12 hours working days when he was the only one allowed to do that? meeting with his lawyers at any time, visitor logs being disposed of against the policy, being allowed to go on shopping trips, walks on the beach for his own health and sanity. He even had an office built, for God's sake, while still in prison. Who even gets that? If he had this life and these privileges in prison, why would he choose to end his own life? Does it really make sense? Does it really? 1 week after having signed his final will, it has been reported that at least one camera in the hallway outside his cell had footage that was unusable, although other usable footage was recorded in the area. 2 cameras that malfunctioned in front of his cell were sent to an FBI crime lab for examination. Federal prosecutors subpoenaed up to 20 correctional officers concerning the cause of his death. On November 19, 2019, federal prosecutors in New York charged Metropolitan Correctional Center guards Michael Thomas and Tova Noel with creating false records and with conspiracy after video footage obtained by prosecutors revealed that Jeffrey had, against regulation, been in his cell unchecked for 8 hours prior to being found dead. On 22nd of May 2021, the 2 guards admitted they falsified records but were spared from any time behind bars under a deal with federal prosecutors. As part of a deferred prosecution agreement, on 25th of May, both officers pleaded guilty to falsifying records and conspiracy to defraud the U.S. They were sentenced to 6 months supervisory release and were required to perform 100 hours of community service. On July the 1st, 2020, a statue of Jeffrey Epstein appeared in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Remember when Jeffrey received a letter from the government in New Mexico saying that he doesn't need to register as a sex offender, even though legally he should have? Well, all those donations paid off, right? He even got a statue, for God's sake, in Albuquerque. Jeffrey Epstein got a statue. Footage of Trump and Jeffrey talking at the 1992 Mar-a-Lago party appeared in 2020 comedy mockumentary Borat subsequent movie film, where the footage is shown inspiring Borat to gift his teen daughter to someone in Trump's inner circle, while with Borat deciding on Mike Pence and later Rudy Giuliani. Later in the film, one of Borat's children also changes his name to Jeffrey Epstein. Now that we covered more or less everything around Ghislaine's and Jeffrey's life and charges and everything else, let's talk about the little black book. On 29th of December 2021, Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty of 5 out of 6 counts in her sex trial. As part of Ghislaine Maxwell's case, several entries of the infamous Black Book were referenced and released as exhibit under seal. However, these were viewed only by jurors and attorneys. Jeffrey Epstein maintained a little black book with the names and contact information of prominent people, including President Donald Trump, Elizabeth Hurley, and Michael Bloomberg. The individuals listed in his book have not been accused of or associated with any of his crimes, and I feel like I really need to get this out there. In 2020, the Miami Herald tried calling many names listed in the book and said that they received a lot of throat-clearing, vague answers. Some people apparently claim that they were in his book because of their connection with Ghislaine Maxwell. Unredacted versions of the 92-page book have appeared online after it was allegedly leaked in 2015 by Gawker, which claimed it was found in court documents. Several members of the Trump family, including the president, his ex-wife Ivana Trump, and their daughter Ivanka Trump, are listed in Jeffrey's book. Listed under Donald's name is contact information for his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach, Florida, specifically numbers for a car and spa. The Trump Organization and 2 numbers for Melania, which is presumably Melania Trump, are also included. Numbers are also listed for Trump security, Howard Wilson Houseman and Norma Direct Emergency Contact. 3 different phone numbers are listed for Ivana, while Epstein had 2 of Ivanka's numbers. Additionally, an address on Manhattan's Upper East Side is listed for Robert Trump, the former president's younger brother, and his former wife, Blaine Trump. Multiple members of the Kennedy family are included in the book, including New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, for which a phone number and Virginia address is listed. Andrew Cuomo was married to Carrie Kennedy, daughter of the late U.S. Attorney General and Senator Robert F. Kennedy, until 2005. A phone number and address for Robert Kennedy's widow, Ethel Kennedy, are included in the book. A Ted Kennedy Jr. is listed, which could refer to Edward Kennedy Jr., a former Connecticut senator and son to Ted Kennedy, the late Massachusetts senator. A Virginia address for Ted Kennedy, real name Edward, is also listed. Several phone numbers, including an emergency contact line, email addresses, and New York addresses, are listed for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his wife, Mary Kennedy. A phone number and a Brighton, Massachusetts address for Joe Kennedy is also included. And I think that is already enough with the information in part 2 of this series. So I'm going to end this video here, and we will carry on in part 3, where we will keep on going with the Little Black Book. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and thank you for, being patient with everything that I'm talking about and seem to be rambling here. But I think it's really important that we get as much information as possible before we start to compare. Okay, so again, I will see you in the next video on this series. I have a playlist put together for the series. The link for it will be in the description down below under this video. Please do let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think so far of everything. Also, I need to mention that I now have a Patreon after a few of you have requested one. And there we usually talk about 18+ stuff. Most of the things that we can't really talk about on YouTube, for obvious reasons. There are 3 memberships available on there, 3 tiers, and there will be crime scene photos included, and including publishing to the members 24 hours earlier than the video is public on YouTube, and also mentioning all of the members at the end of every single video I release on the channel. So if you want to check it out, again, the link is on your screen. It will be also in the description down below. And also, please consider subscribing if you haven't done so already by hitting the subscribe button. Also, make sure you have your notification bell turned on to make sure you are informed of any new videos that I release on the channel. And also, please consider giving this video a thumbs up. It really helps me and my channel, and it really shows the support for the channel, and it will also help with the YouTube algorithm to push the video more on the platform so that more people become aware of it. Again, guys, thanks so much for watching. Take care, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!